Hello, this is Brother Cromar from the Math Department, and this is the first video of Lesson 3. And so what we're going to cover in this first lesson is shape and center of a distribution. First we're going to talk about shape. Now a graph that we use to describe shape is something that's called a histogram. And it's constructed by drawing rectangles like you see down here for each class of data. Now the data here represents, this is students that have taken a class previously, a statistics class, and at that certain point in time the amount in college credits that they have. So for instance, these students here have about over 100 credits here. So what we do is the height of each of the rectangles is the frequency of a class. So for instance, in this area here there's about 18 students, here's about 16. And so what we do is we create these rectangles and put them all together. They're the same width of the rectangles are, and then we combine them so that we can look for the shape of a distribution. For instance, what we can do is that we can get a shape of a distribution in SPSS if we were to do graph, legacy dialog, and then we do histogram. Now this is some data that is from a class, and what we can do is that we can put in, take the credit data for instance, put this in the variable box, and then click on OK, and then we will see a histogram that looks like this. Now what we'll talk about in just a second is this represents a right skewed distribution because the tail is over on the right side. Okay, so then the next thing I want to talk about is the different shapes of a distribution. There's a right skewed distribution, that's this shape over here, a left skewed, and then a bell-shaped distribution. The skewness, you can tell where the skewness is based off of where the tail, not where the body of the data is, but where the tail is. The tail is over on the right side here, so this here represents a right skewed distribution. The tail on the left represents a left skewed distribution. This here represents a symmetrical distribution, which is also bell-shaped. Okay. Now there's other distributions we can cover here briefly. This here represents a symmetrical uniform distribution. That is that with all the bins, they're about equal, and so if they're about equal, this is fairly uniform. This here represents what you could argue is a bimodal distribution, that there's two heights, or the height of this distribution. There's two of them, one right here and one over here. And so that would be called what's called bimodal. This is also symmetrical, where at the center, if you look to the left and look to the right, it's about the same. Okay, we're going to focus more on these three different types of distributions: a right skewed, a bell-shaped, and a left skewed distribution. Okay, now the next item we want to talk about is the measure of center. There's three different types of measures of center, but we're going to focus in on the mean, the median, and the mode. We're going to focus in on primarily the mean and the median, and touch briefly on the mode. Now the mean is just basically summing up all the values, the observations, and then divided by the number of observations. Okay. The median is basically the number that lies in the middle of the data set after you arrange it in an ascending order. So what we do is we first arrange in ascending order, and then if the number of observations is odd, then we take the center position, and that would be your median. If the number of observations is even, then we take the mean of the middle two numbers, and that would be the median. Okay, for instance, what I'll do is that I'm going to say, for instance, a teacher has children whose ages are 13, 15, 17, 19, and 21. Okay. Now, how we get the mean for that is that we would sum up all of these numbers and divide it by the total number of observations, which is 5. In this case, it turns out to be 17. The median is we sort them in ascending order, and we grab the middle number. Since we have an odd number of observations, we just grab the center number. Okay. Now the last definition here is the mode. It's the most frequent observation that occurs. Now in this example here is that there is no mode because there's no ages there's no more than there's just one person per age. Now say for instance if the last children for this teacher there was twins, then this here would be the mode. But notice here that this is the reason why that typically statisticians don't mention the mode is that quite often it could be on the left or the right. And so we usually don't use the mode too much, so you might see that in other situations. And so what I'll do is that I'll stop right here and I'll continue to deal with for the next video with how to do this in SPSS.